Well, welcome back to another episode of Business Journey Unlocked. I'm joined today by Mark Capper, founder of KGI Global, with over 20 years of advising Fortune 500 companies and global innovators. Mark combines strategic foresight, human insight, and quantitative research across product and experience strategy, as well as business model innovation. Mark, it's so great to have you here. I'm very excited to actually pick your brain as a strategist.
Great. Well, thank you, Kevin. It's really great to be here. What KGI is really all about is really deeply understanding people and understanding culture and looking for opportunities for new products and services that'll serve or meet people's needs across a wide variety of industries. So our clients are automotive companies like Mercedes-Benz and BMW. They're medical device pharma companies like Amgen or Siemens Healthineers. Could be consumer products, consumer brands like PepsiCo. So a wide range of industries, but that really comes down to combining in-depth understanding of people and creative skills coming from the world of industrial design and design thinking to generate ideas and evaluate ideas, refine them and shape them and get them ready to go to market.
It's awesome. I love to hear that. So, with that understanding, KGI Global helps enterprise leaders accelerate pretty much stalled initiatives. So, with that in mind, what's the single biggest point of paralysis or uncertainty that you are focused on helping your clients overcome right now?
Mm. So right now, uncertainty is the uncertainty out there. It really truly is. There's so much uncertainty because there's so much change in the world right now, whether it's the world of tariffs, whether it's artificial intelligence, it's changing geopolitical tensions or geopolitical structures. Um, it creates so much uncertainty that a lot of our clients are somewhat frozen. It's hard to get them to move forward and go in any direction right now. So that's a really big challenge right now.
Touching on the AI side, right? There's still a lot of uncertainty revolved around that. A lot of people don't want to, and I do understand this point of view. They don't want to overly depend on it. They just want the artificial intelligence to complement their business. So, with that in mind, what was the biggest hurdle in convincing people in the business industry that you should adopt this way of thinking and this way of technology to complement the business? Again, it's all about complementing instead of
hmm
doing the traditional slower strategy cycle periods.
Yeah. So in bringing AI into the process, one of the biggest concerns they have is confidentiality. If we bring in something like ChatGPT, which is a large language model that's really open to the world, is our data going to be protected? Um, so what they're really looking for is assurance that
Mhm.
their intellectual property, their data, their strategy is going to be protected within the system. Um, Other than that, most business leaders are really quite optimistic about AI. It just really comes down to, are they getting the right answer, and
Mhm.
will their data be secure?
I mean, the biggest thing with artificial intelligence is, as I mentioned, it complements the organization, right? With that in mind, have you seen any of your clients enable AI? It does help the business most of the time. The only reason why I say most of the time is just it depends on what the business is looking for. So sometimes what you project in your mind would be a good fit for the business actually is not what the leader is looking for.
The narrative that's really predominant is the wait and see narrative. I've not seen clients move forward with it and then pull back for any other reason than having lost control of the confidential information, or feeling that confidential information is going to leak. There is one other aspect that we really have to be careful about, and this comes up quite a bit with our clients, is is workforce. If we go into a client and one of my companies is an AI company. We have a tool called a large knowledge model, which is a secure system. And we can go into organizations and work with them to install that inside their organization to help make strategic decisions. And we have to use a lot of messaging for the employees to know that this isn't taking their jobs. This is really augmenting their jobs. And that's a big cultural issue within organizations. And there's a lot of some managers are are so concerned about that that it does hold them back, that they don't want to impact their culture in that way.
Granted, I do see that perspective. And with anything, there would be some jobs that would go away, and then there'd be new jobs that would flourish because of artificial intelligence. So with any new development, any new innovation, primarily, it's just that's just the way life works, right? There's stuff that's gonna go, and there's stuff that's gonna come through it. That's again, that's natural. Beyond the general trend of AI adoption, what what trends in terms of client expectations is essentially changing your perspective or your structure of engagement and deployment in terms of the strategy and the team that you have under your belt?
Everything's become much more multidisciplinary. It's kind of like everything all at once. Not only do we have the insights from AI, but we're getting a lot of cultural insights that are coming in, from just news and information sources from around the globe on how markets are changing, how consumer tastes are changing. Um, and so the world's very, very dynamic right now. And so it's beyond AI. There's just a lot of rapid change right now. And actually, one of the interesting things about AI is that AI can actually be very helpful in managing that change because AI can input. If you open up AI to input information into the system without leaking information out, so you have like a large knowledge model and you're bringing information in, but people can't access your information from the outside. You can create dynamic models. So one of the things that I'm working on with my AI company is to create dynamic foresight models. So we take a point in time and we'll do a lot of research to really understand what the next 5 years or 10 years are going to look like. We put that research into the AI database, and then we create inputs into the AI database so the system can be automatically monitoring the key driving forces that are going to shape the future. And so on a monthly basis, the system's updating itself and giving you as a leader inside of an organization some guidance on, this perspective of the future that looked like it could go in this way is tending to go in this other way. Because we can't predict the future. Usually when we do foresight, there's usually multiple alternative futures that can play out. And but as we move forward, those alternative futures get resolved. And so it's important that we have that data coming into the AI system so we can see which of the multiple futures are going to play out as we're going forward and in what way. Sometimes futures will turn out differently across different industries, differently across different consumer segments like electric vehicles, not widely adopted by everybody, but there's a big segment now of customers that are adopting electric vehicles and it'll likely increase, but it's going to be a big part of the economic equation and the comfort that they have in adopting the technology.
I'm based in New Jersey, so I know Governor Murphy was trying to heavily implement EVs. And, for me and a lot of other people have the same mindset as well. I, for one, wouldn't want to own an electric vehicle. That's just me, right? But it just, and granted, again, going back to the pros and cons, there's pros and cons for everything, but it just mainly revolves around what the individual is looking for in terms of, you can say, profitability or just desirable outcome. Because there's a lot of different factors that dictate as to why somebody may want to get an EV, someone may want to implement AI. It just depends on their situation. So considering, as you mentioned before with KGI, how you've involved yourself with complex, large organizations, for example, Google and Amazon, just to give you two examples, what what effective process or workflow have you implemented lately that's been proven to excel, right, in terms of the functional alignment or rapid decision making for the clients?
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's 2 really fundamental tools, especially when we talk about, for instance, the auto industry where there's electric vehicles, there's hybrid vehicles, there are gasoline vehicles, and we have to look at the mindset of the customer. So it's customers are complex. They make decisions based on a lot of different factors. And so we create, and the auto industry is really good at this. We've been doing this a long time with the automotive industry, and a lot of other of our competitors do this as well, is to create mindset segmentation where we're using a lot of different factors. Usually we go in with maybe 50 or to 100 different factors that we think could be driving choice within the market. And then we do a large quantitative test, a large quantitative research project to evaluate all those factors. And then we create a computer model that will define what's the right collection of factors that are, shaping decisions for each of these different segments. So we don't look at the market as one unified market. We look at the market as a collection of different types of people with different mindsets. And those mindsets could drive people to a portfolio strategy of, I want to have an electric car for around town, but I need to have, the, the, uh, have the Porsche Cayenne because as my pleasure car that I can take for long trips because I love the sound of the engine and all of that stuff. But, there's all kinds of people that have all different types of priorities, but we can cluster them together into segments, pretty effectively. And actually, if you look at brands, like car brands like BMW versus Porsche versus Audi versus, Kia, Honda, they tend to follow somewhat of a mindset segmentation. Some of them overlap quite a bit, but usually there's specific mindsets that'll for Audi over BMW or Porsche over Mercedes-Benz. Those are mindset choices really on the type of people that we're talking to. So that's fundamentally really important is to see that and then also be able to see how that's shifting over time. How are those segments shifting? How are the needs within the segments shifting and are new segments arising? Then on top of that, to lay in a foresight model where you're looking again, like I said, at the different driving forces that are going to shape how the future is going to look. And then with AI, we can use that foresight model with the segmentation to see to kind of project in the future, given these changes, given the driving forces, if the future plays out this way, what's going to happen to this customer that right now is, primarily buying, like high performance SUVs, with kind of German handling. So what are they going to do in 5 years? If you're designing an automobile, it's usually about a 7-year process, 5 to 7 year process to develop a new vehicle from the ground up. It's a big investment. So
Right.
you've got to have analytical tools to really help guide that.
I love that perspective. I love the perspective of not every glove fits the hand, right? That saying. It's just not everything that you have, right? It just depends on the situation and the desired outcome for that company. Sure, this worked for Google, but it may not work for Amazon. Sure, this worked for, BMW, Mercedes Benz, but it just depends on, again, going back to the drawing board. What exactly are they trying to achieve? What is their desired outcome? And then you can just pivot like, okay, this is your main outcome, but let's pivot. Let's say if this happens, if X, Y, and Z happens, we got to go back to A, B, and C,
Mhm.
right? And going with the AI perspective, that really fundamentally helps in terms of just accelerating that decision making. Sure, yeah, as I mentioned, you use it as a framework. You don't use it as your ultimately driving force as the decision maker. Again, as
Mhm.
I mentioned, it complements the decision making.
It does. It's a background of understanding. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So going into 2026 and going just ahead in the future, let's say a decade from now, what's the ultimate goal for KGI Global's operational system? What do you want to achieve with in terms of just growing and expanding the AI components or just growing more of a national footprint? What's the end
Mm.
goal?
Well, definitely growing the global footprint. We already work multinational, but we're a small team. But we tend to, if we need to, we can partner with large organizations. We have German partners that bring us into projects, or we, bring them into our projects as well. So it's really making sure and expanding that global footprint as the world expands as well. We have developing economies around the world; they're going to expand. We're going to have to make sure that we have insight partners that can bring in knowledge from those emerging markets. Um, so that's a big part of it. And I think we're with our AI tool with Shareavance, I think we're really on the forefront of integrating AI into the strategic planning process, into the product planning process for our clients. So we want to maintain that. AI is being used in a lot of different ways inside of strategy firms, but I think it's unique that we're focusing on these dynamic models of bringing consumer insights together, with the AI model that can help to pick up, rapid changing behaviors out there. If your customers, I'm trying to make a, your customers are buying gasoline, all of a sudden energy prices escalate, by 25% or 30%. We want to be able to know how that's going to impact them, right? And so we have to use an AI model to look at, if fuel prices increase to a certain level, what's going to happen? And that way we can help organizations be ready to make those changes.
Yes, I do see your point of view. I mean, given your background and your experience that you've divulged in terms of the consumer market, I think that's a very big proponent on how using AI in the consumer mind would help out with the profitability with Google or with Amazon or even with the auto industry. Because there's so many different strategies, methods, messages that you can do. It just depends on the way you're executing it. And that's what you're there for.
Right, right. And it's important you said consumer markets. We primarily focus on consumer markets. We don't really focus in kind of industrial spaces. We don't work a lot in with B2B companies. If we do, they're usually in the mid-sized market, working in more dynamic spaces.
Now, why is that? Is that just in terms of just more, how should I say, just more experience, more background knowledge?
Yeah, I think it comes back to our fundamental tools. We're really based in combining this process called design thinking that came out of the industrial design world. Companies like IDEO and Frog and Lunar, all these great, wonderful industrial design companies created this process called design thinking, which even goes back before those companies. It's taught in art schools, and but it's been adopted now, by organizations. And that process of design thinking is really for like looking at the consumer, how consumers work, how consumers think, how consumers make decisions. And there's a lot of emotion in that, right?
Yeah.
Consumers are emotional, they're not just rational. And I think that's really what we're really all about, is being able to uncover those emotional drivers. And then, in addition to the rational drivers, of course, like fuel costs and things like that. But the emotion is the fun stuff.
I love how you mentioned that emotion does dictate a lot of decision making. Some
Mhm.
people more revolve around decision making with emotional aspects as opposed to logical aspects. And I
Right.
love how you're really tapping into that. You're really trying to, you can say, exploit it in a way, in terms of just making more of a brand knowledgeable, right? Sometimes bad press is good press. Okay. So even though that it might be a bad image, but you're still getting the growth, the sales. So, I mean, you can look at it one or two ways. You can look at, okay, I have great money, like great profitability standpoint, or you can look at, oh, wow, 2,000 people didn't like this, but you're still going to roll with it because you're still making that money. You're still making that profit. And
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
yeah, you just don't wanna do things that harm people, right? Do things
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
create a big issue in people's lives in a very negative way, and,
Yeah. I
so
mean,
that's yeah.
if you're not harming them, what's the harm, right? There's no harm instead of someone just being a little upset or a little frustrated. Like there's no physical harm. It's just more of a, you can say emotional.
Right. Yeah, and actually, when companies do make decisions like that, where they might make a decision where they shift a brand in this direction or change a product and they lose some of their customers, you know, it might be more profitable to do that. It just depends on, who those customers are, what do they have to do to meet those customers. But then it also creates a new opportunity for another company that wants to come in and take that market share as well. So, so those are always the decisions that portfolio strategists have to make when they're managing product portfolios. Is it worth it for us to have, 8 products in this market when we could get by with 6 and let's drop 2 of them, and because they're just not as profitable as we'd like our earnings to be in our organization.
And that's essentially why you're there. You're there to help them make that ultimate decision. So given your work helping leaders anticipate disruption, what's the single most important mindset shift a leader must make today in this world with not only playing the economy, not only playing this artificial intelligence evolution to ensure their organization is not only resilient but also produces long-term and prosperous growth?
Yeah. Yeah, there's 2 really key things that come to mind around that. The one is kind of straightforward. It's really always be looking right now where AI is going to have an impact in your company 5 to 10 years out in the future. We have around here where I live in Santa Monica, but in the Los Angeles area, we have a bunch of cars without drivers. They're little Jaguar cars, and they don't have drivers. They just drive themselves around the city, pick up passengers like Uber and drop them off. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I started to see these cars, but they had a driver behind the steering wheel that wasn't really driving it. They were just there to prevent something bad from happening when the car was being trained to drive itself, right? So you can see these things, and you see how it's going to shift the world, in front of you. And right now, agentic AI, so AI that can actually act as a human agent, in working with the customer or working in a certain way that kind of it's where it's making decisions on its own and it's doing things on its own. That's a really big deal that's coming up in customer service and in other areas of organizations. So it's important to be adopting those things. The other one is more difficult, and that just has to do with the geopolitical landscape right now around, who knows what's the next announcement around tariffs? Who knows what's going to go on with, the upcoming elections and, where the valuation of currency is going to go and things like that. And I'm glad I'm not in the finance world. I'm glad I'm in the product space, but it still affects us, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. No. It's just you never know what's gonna happen tomorrow, so it's just you have to plan for what's gonna happen. I mean, AI is constantly evolving every single day. Every single
that's a
day.
given.
It's
Yep,
a given.
that we can count on. Yes.
So, stuff that was mainstream 2 years ago is like, "Oh, wow, that's you're still using that? I'm using this and that and so forth." Like, "What are you doing? You're still living under a rock." But it's just the environment, right? You mentioned the geopolitical environment as well. There's so much change that happens every day, every week. It's just constantly evolving. So in that essence, it's hard to kinda keep up with everything if you're not really on top of it.
Mhm.
And then with you in their back pocket, you're like, "Okay." Google, you got to do this. Amazon, you got to do that. Benz, you got to do this. So it's just having that strategist that's actually really there to hone in on that experience
Mm.
is really,
Yeah,
really thrilling.
yeah, and it's fun. I love what we do, especially the creative part. And what really got me really motivated when I came into this industry, I was the researcher, and I was the type of researcher that we call them ethnographers, where we go out into the world and we study customers and observe them. We kind of live with them, on a one-on-one basis to really understand them really deeply. And and I still think that's really important to really understand customers. I don't think that AI is going to be able to predict human behavior. I think human behavior is always going to to guide AI, because humans are just humans. We have a big brain that's very complex and can make a lot of decisions. And I think that's the beauty of humans.
Well, I believe that in certain situations, I'm going to say this, humans are predictable in certain
Mhm.
situations.
Sure.
So, with that in mind, in some essence, AI can predict what humans are going to do, right?
Yes.
You just got to look at it from that point of view. But regarding the whole career you've had from when you first started to where you are now in terms of the entrepreneurship going into that, what's a personal habit or belief that you have carried throughout the whole journey that really transformed and developed where KGI Global is at today?
Yeah, it's the personal habit is to always begin by understanding. Always begin with an in-depth understanding of the situation. So we always begin with research and always begin with qualitative research to really understand the emotion, what's behind the behavior, right? That to me is like the most important guidepost is just, what's the emotion, what's the meaning behind something? Because people behave based on meaning.
I love that. I love that. Before we wrap up here, Mark, what's the best place for people that are listening or watching to this to get in touch with you or KGI Global?
www.kgi.global, and I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit as well. So it's Mark Capper on LinkedIn, Markcapper. And I'd love to hear from anybody who's interested in this field and interested in getting into it. I think there were when I was a little, I was just graduated from my undergrad, in Saginaw, Michigan, and I discovered industrial design. There was this guy named Alan Samuels at the University of Michigan that really he was really enrolling, and he really believed in this process of design thinking, and he changed my life. And yeah, so I'm always there to help somebody along and to help move people forward.
I love that. Just having that mentorship really helps excel a lot of people because you have been in their footsteps before. So you understand the thought, the process that they're involved in, and what can essentially break them out of that pattern. I love
Right.
that. I love that. Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And thank you, everybody who's watching this.
Thank you, Kevin. What a wonderful experience. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, I love this is the first time I'm talking to a strategist. So I was love going into that aspect as well with the AI. I really did love that.
Yeah, great conversation.